Now time to get back into Doctor Who The Cancelled Chronicles with this new schedule. I'm going to be introducing something else new as well. I'm not going to be adding any more fan reactions to the episodes, mainly because I don't feel like it adds a ton, and I don't want to continually do something that doesn't add a ton, as well as being difficult to gauge original episodes. If you really want reactions, I can start adding them to the wiki, which is in the description. But let's move on to the rest of the video. After the 10th Doctor era, everything around Doctor Who seemed a bit shaky. The previous era lost quite a bit of the fandom due to its darker nature and more controversial stories, so the BBC was looking to essentially soft reboot the entire franchise once again. Lance Parkin did express interest in being script editor for another year and had a 2-episode arc for Philip leaving the Doctor. However, when he was essentially let go, Lanning left of his own volition, he felt it was the right decision for the show to get a proper fresh start with a new Doctor. With the BBC wanting to finally evolve the show and have it become more modern, a lot of the stuff involving how the show was run would be redone. The show would no longer be serialized and have a run of 13 episodes per season, with a few 2-part stories throughout the season along with a Christmas special. It would keep the 45-minute running time. This would be the final season with a producer and script editor managing the show, as this would serve as a bridge from earlier seasons to later seasons. While there would still be a producer and script editor in their respective roles like it was done previously, there would also be executive producers, co-executive producers, much like American TV, and a showrunner. With the BBC on the hunt for a new showrunner, Russell T Davies was one of the names floating about, writing for the show for the better part of a decade. When they offered it to him, he ultimately accepted, and he would become showrunner, executive producer, along with Julie Gardner, head of BBC Wales, who would help co-produce the show, as well as Mel Young, and script editor. Phil Collinson would eventually be chosen as producer. It would be an awkward way of handling things behind the camera, but it would get easier as time went on to get people situated with the new format. The only stipulation from the BBC was that it had to essentially be a full-on reboot of the show, while nothing returning from the previous era, with the exception of the Doctor. While Russell T Davies agreed for the most part that it needed to start fresh, they still had Philip and Metzel, the 2 previous companions, to worry about. They ultimately relented and let him finish their story, but they had to be out by the end of the first episode. As tradition, the Doctor would get a new costume, a new TARDIS interior, and a new intro. The costume would be very similar to what Capaldi wore in our universe, very slicked back and simple. The console room would be very similar to the War Doctor's TARDIS, with it being a cross between the old school TARDIS with the New Who TARDIS, as well as the intro essentially being the New Who intro. Since playing it would be copyrighted and I would get demonetized, I will not, but you'll know what it is anyway. I can leave a link in the description if you really want to see it. Then on top of this, we get a new companion who would be a young woman from modern London to help ground the show a bit more and to better relate to the audience. It would be a character named Lucy Miller, and she would be played by Sheridan Smith. She would essentially be her character from the Big Finish Audio's modern girl who doesn't take shit from anybody. With this, let's move on to the actual show. The first episode is The Rampant Nobodies, written by Russell T Davies. People are dying, but nobody cares. In fact, no one even notices. People are dying in broad daylight, right in front of crowds, and nobody bats an eye or has an ounce of compassion. The Doctor, in a post-regenerative state, must get to the bottom of this. This would mainly be a character-driven piece involving the trio with the Doctor in a post-regenerative state, along with this Doctor coming into his own, as well as the Doctor meeting Lucy, who is the only other person that can see that other people are dying on the streets. It is eventually revealed by the end of the episode that it was in fact an alien race beyond emotions, seeing that people got sad because of death. So they eventually brainwashed the entire planet into registering death with apathy rather than sadness. The Doctor explains the complexity of emotions to the race, who understands and apologizes, and turns the planet back to normal. Lucy seeing the death around her was a result of her rare brain chemistry. Eventually, the Doctor leaves with only Philip and Metzel in front of Lucy. He decides to return them home, first with Metzel, who he argues was a valiant soldier in the line of duty. duty. The Ice Warriors eventually accept him back, and he then drops off Philip where he found him, and they have a tearful goodbye, with Philip not wanting to leave, but the Doctor states that he must return him home. Philip then asks the Doctor that he must do something if he leaves. He must have somebody with him. If not him, somebody else, like Lucy. He needs help from somebody. The Doctor smiles and agrees with him. He then departs. He goes back to where he left Lucy, who is gobsmacked by, a disappearing police box, and says, "Well, you see what she can do." Holding out his hand, "Why not take a trip around the universe and back?" She then smiles and takes his hand. The second episode is The Mind Virus, written by Russell T. Davies. The Doctor and Lucy are stuck on a ship somewhere in the far future. It has been quarantined due to a strange sort of virus. It isn't a physical sickness. It is a concept, an idea. It infects the mind and refuses to let go. The people who ordered the quarantine's best hope is for them to just die out and let the virus die. The only choice the Doctor and Lucy have now is survive. This would involve the same type of ship that was featured in The End of the World, just with a different storyline. The best thing I could compare this to is, unfortunately, The Bye-Bye Man. Terrible movie from some years ago, but it's essentially the idea of this ghoul that gets inside your head, and the only way he can infect other people is if you say his name out loud, and infects your mind by constantly thinking about him. So that's what the virus is here. It's this strange concept that is a mystery throughout most of the episode. It's revealed by the end that the way the phrase is said is a series of sounds that unlock something in your mind due to the devices that people have implanted in them. These devices help them communicate with other races. So it wasn't technically a virus, just something that seemed like a virus that caused people to go insane and hallucinate. Eventually, the Doctor takes the devices out and everyone is free from the quote-unquote virus. The Doctor warns them about the devices and they state that they will work on it to create something that won't malfunction like they did. They eventually leave. The third episode is The Unquiet Dead, written by Mark Gatiss. The dead are roaming the streets of Cardiff in 1869 when the Doctor and Lucy arrive, just in time for Christmas. Teaming up with Charles Dickens, the TARDIS team encounter the Gelth, creatures sucked through the Cardiff Rift from the other end of the universe. Their home lost. Surely inhabiting dead bodies is wrong, though. Can both sides be helped? Or are these gaseous creatures not to be trusted? This would adapt the story of the same name, very little changes. The fourth and fifth episodes are Aliens of London, parts 1 and 2, written by Russell T. Davies. The Doctor and Lucy head to modern-day London when a spaceship crashes into Big Ben, causing a worldwide crisis. Worse still, the Prime Minister has mysteriously disappeared. The Doctor's investigation puts him in the spotlight with the British government, as his long history of defending Earth finally catches up with him. But there are sinister goings-on at 10 Downing Street, and politician Harry Jones's quest to get some answers brings her into a brave new world of aliens. This would adapt the story of the same name, very little changes. This time the Brigadier is actually utilized since Unit was in this story, just not a ton due to Courtney's age. The sixth episode is Cold Souls, written by John Dorney. The Doctor and Lucy enter a vast realm where the temperature is below 100 degrees as the vast blizzard makes everyone lose their vision, making him and Lucy lose their minds, thinking they see a creature lurking in the cold and chilly night. Or is it just the madness flowing through? This would essentially be the Doctor versus nature. It would involve the Doctor and Lucy fighting against a blizzard to try and find shelter after the TARDIS dematerializes, leaving them alone. They think they see entities in the blizzard and aren't sure if they're actually there or not. It turns out that they are there, but the local populace trying to help them, and they eventually rescue them and take them to shelter. We get some character-driven moments here with the Doctor learning more about Lucy. The Doctor eventually tracks the TARDIS down and they go out again to find it, but the locals give them a device to talk with them once they get back to the TARDIS, knowing they got back okay. Again, they start to lose their minds a bit and start to see things again, but they just assume it's more of the locals trying to help them. They eventually get back to the TARDIS, and when the Doctor starts communicating with them again, they realize that none of the locals were out helping them, leaving the both of them to question if what they saw was real or not. The seventh episode is Sleepy Hollow, written by Matt Jones. The Doctor and Lucy enter North Terrytown in the 1700s, where the Doctor is posing as a teacher to help hunt down the sightings of the Headless Horseman. This would essentially be the Legend of Sleepy Hollow story, but with the Doctor and Lucy. It would have been revealed that aliens were essentially LARPing on planet Earth, using Earth literature from all points of time. The Doctor eventually gets them to stop, but it soon becomes an actual legend in the town, which causes Washington Irving to be inspired to write the story, coming full circle. The 8th and 9th episodes are Sycorax Rising, parts 1 and 2, written by Russell T. Davies. The Doctor and Lucy enter a forbidden planet that never should be traveled to as a species named the Sycorax is discovered, who invaded the planet many years ago. The Doctor and Lucy get kidnapped to help lure the minds of innocent lives to their doom on other planets. It would follow some parts of the Christmas invasion, but instead of Earth, it's this random planet, but it would have involved a full-scale invasion from years ago. It would mostly be an original story of the Doctor and Lucy getting captured and using their blood to try and control them, just like they did to the population years ago, as well as any other information they can find. The Sycorax have grown bored of this world and wish to conquer others, and decide to use the Doctor and Lucy to do it. In the Part 1 cliffhanger, they escape. The second episode becomes a Doctor helps the rebels story with the population of a distinct and rare blood type hiding in the shadows until it's primed to attack. The Doctor tells them of the Sycorax's plans and think it would be perfect time to attack now. Ultimately, the Sycorax are defeated, but they leave the planet just in time before they are captured. The brainwashed people are freed, and the Doctor and Lucy leave the planet. The 10th episode is The Peacekeepers of Time, written by Paul Cornell. Somebody has affected the timeline in a major way, and the Doctor is there while the Reapers attacked. What has gone wrong, and is it too late to stop it? This would involve some bits of Father's Day, but not totally. It's more of a random event that Lucy helps stop and the Reapers attack, similar to the original episode. Eventually, it is put right, and the Doctor and Lucy leave, with the Doctor talking about certain points in time that are close to being fixed points in time, but not quite, and must be left alone. It creates a bit of a rift between Lucy and the Doctor. The 11th episode is Deafening Silence, written by Nicholas Briggs. The Doctor gets off the TARDIS and hears nothing. Both the Doctor and Lucy speak, but nothing comes out. Is it the world they're on, or has something been done to them? This would be another mystery episode with the Doctor and Lucy trying to find out what happened to them. The world they're on is barren, akin to post-apocalyptic. Even things that would normally make sounds, nothing is heard. Even when they go back into the TARDIS, there's nothing. There's also no dialogue throughout most of the episode. They explore the world and don't seem to find another soul, hostile or otherwise. They eventually learn from a Capitol building-looking place that there was an invasion of aliens who could hear many miles away. Think the aliens from A Quiet Place, but not quite as overpowered. And so they released a device that would silence every sound on the planet. With nothing to hear, they couldn't hunt, and they eventually died out. However, the officials declared the planet too dead to be habitable, so they eventually left, still leaving the machine on. While trying to find the device, they come across some dying aliens who pose some of a threat, but not much. They eventually get to the place where the device is, turn off the device, and the two reconcile after the events of the previous episode. They eventually trek back to the TARDIS and leave. The 12th and 13th episodes are The Empty Child, Parts 1 and 2, written by Stephen Moffat. Chasing a metallic object through the time vortex, the Doctor and Lucy arrive in London during the Blitz. While Lucy meets a mysterious stranger who is responsible for bringing the object, the Doctor finds a group of homeless children terrorized by Jamie, an empty child wearing a gas mask. This would adapt the story of the same name, very little changes. However, in this version, Nancy isn't played by Florence Hoth, but by Sophia DiMartino, and then Captain Jack, still played by John Barrowman, would be dropped off in the present instead of coming back with them in front of Unit HQ. The Christmas special is Death in Blackpool, written by Alan Barnes. Lucy Miller always loved Christmas back home in Blackpool. Her mom running a still frozen turkey under the hot tap at 10, great-grandma Miller half cut on cooking sherry by 11, her dad and her uncle arguing hammer and tongs about who was the best James Bond all throughout dinner, and in the afternoon, Auntie Pat hurrying up to the house on the back of a moped, weighed down with ridiculous presents. Christmas 2005 didn't turn out like that. Christmas 2005, the Doctor showed up. This would adapt the Big Finish story of the same name with some changes. Obviously, all the Zygon stuff would have to be introduced here rather than previously, as well as the fact that Lucy does not leave the Doctor here, but their relationship becomes rocky due to the events of the story. The first season of Russell T Davies' reign on Doctor Who was met with positive fan reaction. It was more grounded and episodic, and for the most part played it safe, which after the previous era, the BBC was very happy with. Everyone loved Lucy Miller and immediately stated that she was one of the best companions in recent memory. Now comfortable as showrunner, Russell T Davies decided to expand into some more experimental things in this season, as well as reference back to the previous era to allow for some character development for this version of the Doctor. There were some tidbits here and there throughout the previous season, but he didn't want to remind people of the previous era too quickly. It was also announced that this season would be Sheridan Smith's final season as Lucy Miller, and she would be leaving during the penultimate penultimate story of the season. Mal Young also left after the first season to focus on other projects. The first episode is The Life of Nightmares, written by Mark Gatiss. The Doctor has some type of recollection of an event from his past, his previous incarnation, but he can't remember what it is. Somebody took a memory away from him, but it's a memory he has had to confront for a long time. So this would essentially reintroduce the event of the time the Doctor allied himself with the Daleks, and then subsequently killed them all in the next story they were featured in. It would have had the Doctor trying to find the memory deep within the recesses of his mind, like a journey into the center of the Doctor type situation, but in the Doctor's brain. Then it would eventually be revealed that the Time Lords took away this memory so that he didn't have to deal with the guilt of his actions, which of course makes him furious, with the Time Lords being seen as the villains once again. This would have the Doctor being a bit more angry, but at the same time more compassionate, since he doesn't want to fall into those traps once again, and trying to be better than what he once was. The second episode is Company, written by Paul Cornell. While traveling in the TARDIS, a small family from the Victorian era suddenly appears in the TARDIS. They soon believe that the Doctor is the devil and they're in hell. Another more experimental episode. The Doctor and Lucy come back from a regular adventure, and the Doctor is getting ready to go. But when the TARDIS tries to dematerialize, it sort of goes in and out. They dematerialize, but then rematerialize quickly, with being unable to fully leave. The Doctor then sees a family slowly start to materialize. They make some rash accusations on who the Doctor and Lucy are and where they are. They run away from the duo, and Lucy has to find them, while the Doctor figures out the mystery. Essentially, an exploring the TARDIS episode for Lucy, and then a figuring out the mystery episode for the Doctor, as well as being a TARDIS bottle episode. We have Lucy exploring the TARDIS while holding a device that would teleport them back to the console room and keep them there until the Doctor figures this out. Each member then has a dialogue with the Doctor every time they go to the console room. It turns out that the adventure they had was from 1912, just a random nothing adventure, but the TARDIS malfunctioned trying to dematerialize. It landed on the Titanic and materialized the family onto it. The Doctor then must go through the pain of having to put them back onto the Titanic, but at the last second, he ultimately decides not to and drops them off at their home. The final scene has the family believing now that they are not devils, but angels. Also, before you historians get mad at me with the Victorian shit, 1912 technically counts as the Victorian era, so to hell with you. But it was also kind of inspired by the first episode of the New Who era, with Clive explaining to Rose who the Doctor is and whatnot, and there was the time when the Doctor saved the family from the Titanic, so I decided to use that here. The third episode is School Reunion, written by Toby Whithouse. Defrey Vale High School is haunted by strange bat-like creatures at night. When the Doctor investigates, he finds an old friend, Sarah Jane Smith, already working undercover. This would adapt the story of the same name. Very little changes. The fourth and fifth episodes are Blood Tide, parts 1 and 2, written by Jonathan Morris. The prehistoric Earth is dying. Thunderclouds roll across the skies, cloaking the land in darkness. The seas crash and boil as the rain turns to acid. The remnants of the Silurian race place themselves in suspended animation, deep below the surface. One day they will awaken and reclaim their world. The TARDIS has landed on the Galapagos Islands, a desolate outcrop of rocks shrouded in mist and fear. In the settlement of Balcures Moreno, there are rumors that prisoners have been mysteriously disappearing from the Gull House. A fisherman has been driven insane by something he saw in the caves, and the Doctor and Lucy are not the only new arrivals. There is also a young natural philosopher by the name of Charles Darwin. This would adapt the Big Finish audio of the same name. Very little changes. The sixth episode is The Massacre of Calivita, written by Jacqueline Rayner. The Doctor and Lucy find themselves a part of history, a small town in Axis-occupied Greece in 1943. The Doctor finds out that today would result in the near extinction of the male population of the town. He must find a way to stop more deaths from occurring, but circumvent certain events so history can stay intact. This would actually be a pure historical episode involving the historical event of the same name. The Doctor and Lucy get caught in the middle. They manage to save a few people, but not too much that it will change the fixed point in time. It is also shown that the Doctor was the person that left the door to the primary school that burned down unlocked in order to save the women and children. They eventually escape to the TARDIS after the massacre before they are actually caught. It shows the Doctor and Lucy being saddened by what has happened, with the Doctor wishing he could have done more. The final scene is of the Doctor and Lucy going to the memorial and leaving a small flower before walking away. The 7th episode is Creature of Lies, written by Robert Shearman. The Doctor and Lucy arrive in 2012 to answer a distress signal and meet a collector of alien artifacts who has one living specimen. However, the Doctor is horrified to find out that the creature is a member of a race he allied with so long ago and is one of his deadliest foes. This would adapt the story Dalek, with some changes. The main things would be the identity of the Dalek being kept hidden until the Doctor actually enters the room with the Dalek. I felt that in this continuity they would want to keep it a secret due to the major consequences of the actions of the Doctor, with the Daleks having a history shown on screen, as well as the character of Adam not being taken along with the Doctor and Lucy. The 8th and 9th episodes are The Impossible Planet Parts 1 and 2, written by Matt Jones. The Doctor and Lucy lose the TARDIS down a deep chasm, leaving themselves stranded on a space base positioned on a planet in the orbit of a black hole. Meanwhile, an entity who identifies as Satan himself is awakening and beginning to cause chaos amongst the crew. This would adapt the story of the same name. Little changes. The 10th episode is The Professor's Pet, written by Helen Rayner. The Doctor lands near Oxford University, and it is covered with a gigantic octopus. Obviously, someone is up to something. Possibly world domination? The Doctor, of course, has to figure it out. This would be the season's silly episode. After some very dark stories, it was seen as a bit of a break episode. It would involve a professor at the university, Reginald R. Rumbottom III, finding what he believes is this ancient book of spells and trying to use it for world domination. It brings forth a demonic octopus that the Doctor and Lucy now must stop. It is revealed to be an experiment from the far-off future that teleported to the present. Eventually, the octopus is brought back to the future, and Rumbottom is arrested for endangering innocents. The 11th episode is The Headless Monks, written by Stephen Moffat. The Doctor and Lucy are separated in the distant future, where they encounter the Order of the Headless on Demon's Run. At first they seem to be peaceful, but soon find out that there is an order out for the Doctor's head, and Lucy is caught in the middle. This would essentially introduce the Order of the Headless, but in the Russell T Davies era. It wouldn't adapt A Good Man Goes to War, but essentially just use those characters for an entirely original story, similar to Sycorax Rising. It would essentially involve Lucy finding out that the Doctor isn't who he says he is, learning of all the terrible things the Doctor has done over the course of his lifetime and whatnot. Lucy starts to distrust the Doctor further and further until it is revealed to be a ruse by the meddling monk, played by Graham Garden. The Doctor and Lucy narrowly escape the Order, and right when they are about to leave in the TARDIS, the monk finds them and reveals that it is his TARDIS they are in. While the monk plans to use the Doctor for his own fun schemes, Lucy apologizes for believing his lies, and when the TARDIS begins to dematerialize, Lucy pushes the Doctor out of it. The monk's TARDIS leaves without him, with Lucy still inside. The monk promises to have fun with her, but Lucy doesn't take that shit, and no matter where he goes, what he does, Lucy will be there to stop him. Maybe have some fun on the side. The episode ends with the monk looking scared. The 12th and 13th episodes are Excelsior, Parts 1 and 2, written by Tom McRae. Humans have finally reached the brink of warp space travel, and the Doctor wants to visit this glorious moment in history. But something goes wrong, and the Doctor must figure it out before time descends into chaos. This involves the Doctor on a run-of-the-mill adventure, trying to bring his spirits up after Lucy was kidnapped by the monk, and with no way to get her back. He tries to witness a major event in human history, but something goes wrong with the ship that they're on, and the launch has to be delayed. The Doctor tries to fix the ship along with the pilot, Michael Wessler, but nothing he seems to do works, so they go to Michael's boss, Richard Wright, who tries to make excuses for the launch. Then the episode ends with Wright pointing a gun at them and stating that he has to do this or the entire Earth is doomed. Obviously, the duo are not killed, because Wright seems to start talking to himself at the beginning of the next episode, and Wessler fights him and pulls the gun out of his hand. They interrogate him on what he has done to the spacecraft, and Wright says it will never fly again, based on some technology that he was told to make. Then the Doctor and Wessler leave and try to find whatever is stopping the spacecraft from functioning. The Doctor eventually finds the device and sees it is cyber technology. Richard then receives another message from what he assumes is beyond, and we hear the voice is a very familiar robotic voice. It is in fact the Cybermen, stopping human progression so they are easier to take over and convert. They invade the planet, and the Doctor and Michael must stop them before it's too late for humans to discover warp drive. Through typical Doctor-like events, he puts a stop to the Cybermen threat, makes the spacecraft functioning, and the humans then reach warp drive possibilities while Richard is arrested. After everything is said and done and the crew returns, the Doctor offers Michael a chance to travel with him, which he accepts. The Christmas special is The Christmas Invasion, written by Russell T. Davies. It's Christmas Eve, and the Doctor and Michael are investigating an alien threat that is threatening the lives of everyone in modern London. They meet a young woman being terrorized by mannequins, and it's only then does the Doctor realize what the threat really is, the Autons. But then suddenly, the Doctor is out cold and nothing can wake him up. It's up to Michael and a young woman named Jackie to stop the Auton threat. This would partly adapt two stories. It would mainly adapt Rose with the Auton threat and that overall storyline, but then it would bring in aspects from the actual Christmas invasion, with the Doctor getting knocked out and being out of commission for most of the episode, making it a Doctor Light story. It would eventually lead to Michael and Jackie stopping the threat by themselves with how the Doctor did in Rose. It is revealed by the end of the episode that the Nestine consciousness knocked the Doctor out to get him out of commission, so he couldn't stop the invasion. The second season was also praised. It also brought some sort of development context for the 10th Doctor era, which some appreciated. Michael Wessler was praised as the new companion, but Lucy was liked more. But that is it for the first two seasons of the new era of Doctor Who. Next up, we have the final series of the Bernice Summerfield adventures, which will be in May with the new schedule. Until then, I'll have some other videos for you in the meantime.